All right, we're going. We got no time to waste. Right, Nick?
That's right.
Yeah, we're together. We're going to put this up. We're going to upload this. We're going to talk about the debate. That's the only thing we're going to talk about today.
hmm
So, we both watched it. Nick, after you watched the debate for the first time, what were your immediate reactions?
Once it ended, my immediate thought was, I feel like Trump's kind of gone off the deep end. He's
Mm-hmm.
like totally infected by by the people
The
around
the
him.
woke mind virus.
Yeah, the woke mind exactly. Um, he just seems like he's lost his step, and he doesn't have that appeal to the crowd, that appeal to the middle class anymore. Like I don't know if you noticed this, but he basically never discusses like helping regular people or like policies that kind of impact them. It's all like Israel and
I
abortion
think
talk. Like,
immigrant. What's funny? So for context, we watched some highlight clips before we started recording. They didn't focus on any of. He can't stop talking about immigration. I think that's his one remaining appeal to like the middle class
I
is the
agree.
idea of like this great replacement fear from immigrants. And honestly, none of the we watched some partisan clips, so none of them included any of his conversations about immigration. But I think that is his main argument is that if he gets into office, he's going to fix immigration. Uh
Well, in recent
yeah.
rallies, he's kind of implied that like they would round him up.
Yes, he said some pretty extreme stuff
Yeah.
regarding it towards his base. I agree with you that I think he is not nearly as impressive as he was 8 years ago.
Yep.
He's 79 right now.
Old.
He's incredible. He's not Biden old. If you go back and watch that debate, if you want to be shocked, because I know in the moment we were both shocked, but
Yeah.
they were showing some clips of that debate, and I was like,
It's so bad.
holy, he looked, I forgot
The
how bad he looked. That's
the
how good a job that Kamala's team has probably done at like memory holing Biden.
Biden, yeah. And the clip with where I know this is not the right debate, but the Joe Biden clip where he says we beat Medicare.
We beat Medicare.
It's so bad.
We beat we beat Medicare.
We beat,
We beat Medicare.
uh,
We beat it. It's over.
it's just-
But I think the thing is like I was getting upset while like talked about how we lean. We're politically a bit all over the place with this federal stuff, but I don't think Kamala was particularly good, and I think
no.
that she's getting too much credit from news organizations for this idea that she schemed or game
Mhm.
planned. I don't think that deserves as much credit as
Yeah,
journalists and pundits give it. I think it's really stupid this idea that makes you a better presidential candidate if you know how to
dance around
like Steven
questions.
Crowder, Charlie Kirk, somebody into looking
Yeah.
stupid. She did a good job at it. I think you could make the argument that if you're incapable of getting tricked during a debate, then maybe that gives credit to how you'd be as a president. I don't agree with that,
And
but I do think that she was able to use the platform to give viewers an insight to how Trump can get so easily needled and how he
yes,
can become so vindictive and kind of go off the rails at a moment's notice.
Trump to go off the rails, but I don't think he really lost his cool per se. Like he was still collected, whereas there was a Biden debate where like he got insane.
Yes, I
And
remember
he at
that.
least
Yeah.
like kept his cool. I mean, what were some other key issues that were discussed? Neither of them, I mean, they both looked really bad when they discussed Israel.
It was pretty
It
embarrassing.
was.
I think it's really a big thing that's going to be interesting for the election is the fact that Jill Stein is making significant ground in Michigan
Right, right, right.
and potentially might have an impact on Pennsylvania, which is making Democrats incredibly upset. There's this I don't know, it's this third party group called the Third Way
Okay.
that's from the Democrats that they promote themselves as defending the democratic process of the elections.
Okay.
But the main things they've done for 2024, like here's their laundry list, is they've gotten RFK and Cornel West removed off of a bunch of ballots. And now they're coming out and saying that third party candidates are historically white supremacists. And they included Jill Stein in that assertion, which is really funny.
So they're basically trying, they're called the third way, but they're trying to eliminate third
Yes,
party candidates to help Kamala win.
yes, it's incredible. It's called the Third Way, and it's against the idea of having uh, a ballot with multiple people on the ticket besides Trump and
Their name
Kamala.
their name makes no sense.
No, it's like a trick. it's like the National Socialist Party or the Democratic Republic of Korea. You know
Right.
how that stuff doesn't actually mean that. It's like those places are were the opposite of that.
And that's why they're called the third way.
But going
Interesting.
circling back to the debate, I mean, the areas in which Kamala looked, she clearly just had a lot of prepared speeches
Yep.
that she was ready to implement when the topic veered into that direction. I don't
Yep.
think there was ever, I don't think she got questions ahead of time or anything like that. You know what the topics are going to be. And she knows, she's not a complete like idiot that wouldn't know when to do those pre-recorded lines. But there's
Yep.
some silly stuff that happened, like when she was like, you have to say that to the 800,000 Polish people in Pennsylvania, when he was talking about Ukraine, and it was like, I'm not going to believe that Kamala knew the amount of Polish
She had the
descendant
number in her
people
head,
that,
yeah.
it's so that stuff came off as pretty. I mean, it's hard to beat the allegations of her being insincere and disingenuous because uh, the moderators kind of pushed that issue at one moment when they talked about how she flipped on all of these major
Yep.
policies.
That was the female moderator.
Yes, the female moderator, and we'll get to the moderators
Oh,
in a bit.
yeah,
But I'm sure the people listening want to
Already
talk about
know.
how they're evil.
corrupt-
These evil, corrupt moderators.
Yes.
They just want to get Donald Trump killed. Anyway, like when talking about that, Kamala did not have a real answer besides saying that her value, which the moderator gave her like a back door, because I don't understand why the moderator had to set it up by saying, you've said your values haven't changed. Because that's all Kamala was like, yeah, my values haven't changed. And then she went through and was like, I'm not in support of a gun buyback program. I'm not in support of banning fracking. I'm not in support of this. I'm not in support
But
of
she
that.
said all those things
In 2019, that was her campaign.
Yep.
And, politicians are never allowed.
She stands for nothing.
Yeah, but politicians will never, like, they're not allowed to, I think, in a public forum to admit that they're wrong. I don't know what would happen if I can't remember a time like during a debate, during rallies, speeches, people running for president, where they've been like, hand up, got that one wrong. They can't admit that if it's because of voters won't take them seriously. I don't know what
I would like to see some more humility in our leaders.
Sure, but I don't think the average American would.
Really?
Because then, so if Kamala was like, you know what, I was wrong, but now I support these things, the Republicans would act like that she's like weak because of it. And I know that's not a big deal, but
Terrible.
I don't think people would like positively respond to that level of honesty.
That's why. Yeah, I'm not going to even say you're wrong. I'm just going to say that's sad.
No, I agree. It's sad. So
Yeah.
we can talk about the moderators now.
So I think we mentioned this to each other. The black female moderator was sorority sisters with Kamala.
Which that means they were not. I don't believe they were.
Were they in at the same time?
No, I
Okay.
don't believe they were in at the same time.
But they still know each other.
Significant age difference.
Right.
But she had spoken very positively about
Right.
Kamala in the past, and I believe that is not their first interaction.
Even the guy was terrible.
John Muir.
Terrible.
Yeah. And I
always with his hand up,
yeah,
telling Trump, like, be quiet, Trump. That made me so annoyed.
And so I think
the guy was worse.
Yeah, I think he probably was.
Yeah.
I think neither of us believe that real-time fact-checking is inherently a bad idea.
Yeah,
but it immediately loses its relevance when it's only used on one person. And
That's
now a counter argument that some people would make is that it was not required for Kamala. But you and I both know that's not true.
That's false.
She said a lot of false things.
Dude, she said, okay, one thing that really bothered me was she says that Trump left us with the worst economy since the Great Depression.
Worst unemployment rate.
Worst unemployment rate. That's false.
Yeah.
Great Recession of 08.
Yeah.
Like right there. Boom.
Also, it's like
terrible.
It was COVID.
It was COVID.
Can we act like COVID was a thing?
Yeah,
because that was the period in which COVID was starting to ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even remember. There's no way that unemployment was at its absolute worst in January of 2021.
It wasn't.
It was bad.
It was just, but it's such an obvious, like, even like a few seconds of thought.
They could fact check that
Right.
immediately.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the fine people on both sides
has been debunked.
It's been debunked. It's been brought up by. It's funny that is clearly, like, it's obvious that the same people that help Biden help her.
Yep.
Because that's straight Biden, I think, brought that up in every single debate in 2020. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for the 2020 stuff, he might have even brought it up in the 2024 debate. I can't remember,
Yeah.
but that's been like a classic thing that has been debunked with him saying that. I mean, I think in terms of other stuff, I don't know. They probably could have fact checked her on a few more
Also,
things.
like some of the topics that were discussed were just like so silly. Like we're sitting here now, it's like, what did we actually learn about Kamala and her beliefs and her positions?
Do you think we should have talked about? I think like if one of the biggest issues that you could probably talk to every single American about that is never going to show up in one of these debates is homelessness,
Mm,
and that related to drug abuse. And
okay. Yeah.
why I think that for me is like one of the topics that it doesn't make sense why that's never brought up. And it's
There's
like,
no solution.
why are we wasting time?
Well, there's
But
no solution.
there's no solution.
There's not.
You only want a president to try, but there's no solution to most of the stuff they talk about.
I know, but like that's like too depressing. Like,
I
okay,
guess you're
like
right.
what's the actual
But
solution to
should
homelessness?
as a
There's
response,
none.
don't the moderators have a responsibility to ask those questions so they can see what the future leader of our nation has to say? Like, shouldn't the moderators not care? The people, if I'm assuming they prep the questions, or a team, is that not a relevant
But yeah, the
thing?
moderators aren't smart enough to make those questions, and the questions were bad. But they're not even smart enough to make those.
Smart people, I think that they
Uh,
they want to create
I don't know.
a debate. I guess.
They're manipulative, that's for
Well,
sure.
sure.
Oh,
I
quick
don't.
comment on
Okay, yeah,
really
go
quick
for it.
on the tariffs. I gotta mention this as well.
Yeah,
Tariffs are bad. I don't like when Trump says he wants tariffs. It bothers me. Tariffs aren't a good idea
yeah.
because the problem is this: he wants to put tariffs on foreign goods, right? But number one, that's just going to raise the price of foreign goods. And it's like, oh well,
And
Nick,
we don't have the
we
American.
can't, we have no
That's the
capacity.
issue. That's the issue because a tariff could work in a situation like, okay, steel, I guess, is the comp,
Right.
but for most goods, most foreign goods, we aren't making that shit.
We don't make it here.
So then there's no point. We're not actually, and so then all it does is create an extra cost for the consumer.
And then, so yeah, so exactly. So it's like if, let's just give an example, cars, okay? We make some cars in America. We really don't. I mean, we make them in Mexico and then whatever. But
And then even
yeah,
Japanese companies, they make cars in America,
right,
or German companies do too.
right, yes.
Then South Carolina and Georgia.
So there is an example where tariffs might work, okay? But like that's not what he's talking about. If you actually go back, if you look at the tariffs that he put on China, it was like medical equipment, medication, actually a lot of COVID stuff, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, agricultural goods like crops that we don't really grow. And these are things that it's going to raise the price, and there's no American competitor that can undercut them. So, and then he brags on stage. He literally brags, and he says, "Oh well, these tariffs have generated. I'm just going to pull a number out of my ass. $80 billion for the U.S. government." It's like, yeah, dude,
You're
that's
taxing
taxes. We're
individuals.
like, we literally tax the American people for $80 billion. But like, do people watching not understand that? Do people watching actually think China gave us that money? Like,
People really think that I get the legitimate, like
terrible.
I get that China's our enemy. I know that, to the people listening, you
Hmm.
dicks. I get that China's the enemy, but the idea that the reasons we dislike China, right,
Yep.
is because they're a command market economy
Yes.
and they're not quote unquote capitalists like
I'm
we
actually okay
are.
with that. I don't like that they're trying
But
to.
I'm saying that's why we feel they are a threat, right? Is the way that they conduct
Yeah, yeah.
their economy. They're not fair.
Hmm.
They're not honest.
Hmm.
They take our ideas, they take our intellectual property, and they
Yes.
use it. Which one? A lot of that is our fault. You
How's
know,
that?
well, we gave them the turnkey facilities, and we gave them all of this industry that allowed them to
Oh, right,
copy
right.
us,
Yeah, yeah.
and we introduced
We
them through
outsourced all of our
trade
business to them.
to
Yeah.
all of that. And I don't know why we expected them to never.
Want to do it themselves and
Exactly.
become
But we
independent.
gave them all of the tools to do that.
Yep.
But in addition to that, when we do stuff like tariffs, when we do a ban on Chinese EVs,
Hmm.
we're essentially doing the things that we complain about China doing in terms of not being fair and not letting the economy and the
Work itself
invisible
out.
hand sort itself out, which is like one of our big arguments as to why we're better than China and why
Hmm.
China is this scary problem.
Yeah.
But if we're not actually going to let the merits of capitalism compete against China and then end up just limiting them and not being business partners with them, I feel like, I mean, obviously we're hypocrites, but it's just a huge example of the hypocrisy when it's like we could have a better working economic relationship with China,
Yes.
but most of this is our fault. And if people were not able to anticipate that China would do these things, it's just a complete. It's a lot of just
The
idiots.
China problem is just another of many examples of the way we've mishandled our empire. That's what
Yeah.
it is. It's empire
We did the
mismanagement.
same thing with Russia
Yep.
after the Cold War.
Yep.
You know, you look back, and it's. I mean, I guess the Marshall Plan is actually controversial now, but if you look back at it from
It's
an
a good idea.
economic standpoint, it was great for the United
Yeah, it's a good
States,
idea.
and it worked very well. And we didn't have any good plans in place for the post-Soviet Union Russia. George Bush did not capitalize on that. Bill Clinton didn't capitalize on that enough. And then you look at China, and we have this complete combative relationship with this nation that we have become incredibly dependent on.
Yep.
And they are working on not being dependent on us.
Yep.
And they design their currency and design their economy around making us reliant on them.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're mad essentially
Because we got
of that.
outplayed.
And then
Yeah.
now countries are trying to goad us into war to fight China over like Taiwan.
Yeah,
It's
which is
ridiculous.
silly. We should just import every Taiwanese citizen to America.
All right.
Drop them in Nebraska. I mean, they've
And
got
then what happens when they eat the cats and the dogs?
that we cast him out. Oh my god, we cast him out like a leper.
Do you think Trump would have been fact checked?
The Taiwanese.
If he was just being, they're just like, Trump, you're just being racist. Because that thing with like Haitians, it's like there's no precedent. But if these were Asian immigrants and he made that claim, it'd be a really bad look.
Yeah,
To
I mean,
claim that they eat cats
the
and dogs.
the Taiwanese immigrants are only as good as we allow them to be. Dropped at the first sign of a hat,
Okay.
like a leper.
Yeah. Jesus. What do you? We should talk about Springfield, Ohio. 'Cause I
Yes.
think it is funny that like there's a legitimate conversation to be had about that Springfield is kind of a microcosm of these negative effects of mass immigration on Americans. On
It's a
workers.
positive impact.
No, it's bad on for Americans.
Do I misunderstand this place?
What do you mean?
Okay, wait. This is the place with all the Haitians, right?
Yeah.
Okay, first off, Dad, I know we don't like Haitians. Totally get it. I agree. Now let's keep going.
Dominican.
Yeah, we don't like Haitians.
I forgot you guys because the voodoo, right?
There's a lot of reasons.
But,
they
okay.
steal our lumber.
I know.
They come over.
so
they take our shit.
that
They
relationship
rob
is
from
really
us.
funny.
They're terrible.
It's so funny.
And
to
then
me.
they speak Spanish. They speak French.
In Creole, right?
Yeah.
But anyways,
Disgusting.
okay, my perspective on the problems is you put 20,000 immigrants who don't have good English skills.
Yep.
They don't have great communication skills. They don't have a great understanding of the machinations of, mid-sized city American culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then the stuff I'm reading, not cats and dogs, because that I've seen that video. She was not Haitian, and it
She's
wasn't in
not.
Springfield.
She appears to be like on high, on
bath
drugs.
salts. She was
Yeah.
on some sort of crazy drugs.
Yes.
So that got Trump dog clearly got just completely tricked by, I assume, like Barron or one of these.
Imagine if it was his son. Yeah.
One of the sons, or JD Vance. I think
Or
honestly,
Laura
it was-
Loomer,
yeah,
or some other nut job.
Laura
that he's been
Loomer,
hanging
that
out with.
walking skeleton.
Yeah, she looks scary. True.
If she was pretty though, we'd be rooting for her. Sorry, that's a side.
Like that's you know what an example of that is? Who's that cute blonde girl on Fox News? McEnany is her name?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're watching this, you know who you are. Really likes her. And like she's crazy. She's crazy, but he just likes her because she's pretty.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
Anyways, my point is, so the medical system in Springfield is completely exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
They don't know how to communicate with these people. And it's not a critique on anybody, but they don't have enough French I think French speakers.
yeah.
So they don't know how to communicate with the Haitians. It's become
Sacre bleu. Where's my mama?
It's become a huge burden on the healthcare system. It's also depressing wages.
Nice.
And I know you like that bullshit.
Yeah.
Because you like how, these factory owners like, we love the Haitians. We don't even have to feed them.
Yeah.
Because they're moving up in status. And listen, I'm not going to act like any individual American is harder working than any immigrant, because they're not.
They're
myself
not.
included.
Immigrants are harder work.
They're way harder working.
Way better.
But there's an issue, I think, when they're being utilized to keep wages low. because that's a huge effect of immigration is that they keep wages for Americans low.
Look, the truth of the matter is, if we ever want America to become an industrial powerhouse again,
we don't.
we need, well, hey, hey,
I don't.
I do.
Okay.
And in order to make that happen, there's all this talk about manufacturing jobs and how we don't create anything anymore and how we don't export anything. Well, that's all manufacturing. If we want that for this country, we need immigrants at low wages.
But
because Americans won't work for the wages required to
I'm
be
aware.
globally competitive in
But
manufacturing.
by allowing those immigrants to work those types of jobs, it keeps wages lower across the board for Americans.
Fine.
But so then it creates a bigger. It's
What's the
being
alternative? The alternative is that we have a massive trade deficit and that we print money and that causes
I'm
prices to
not saying
rise.
we have to do that either. But
Well,
this idea that our only solution is to pay Americans less.
well, we need to export. We need to export.
Sure, but we can be, so what? Like, I don't know. I look at these countries that have found it, who have been able to find success in having heavily unionized industrialized, or heavily unionized industry.
Like Italy.
Well, a lot of those places in
Okay.
Europe.
Germany.
And Sweden.
Okay.
All of Sweden is industrial, or all of Sweden is unionized.
I wasn't aware of that.
So I think it's Sweden. If it's like Denmark or whatever,
Okay.
the same.
They're all the
fucking
same,
place.
yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Anyways, no, in let's say Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
there's no minimum wage,
I see.
but everything is run and operated by unions, so all
Okay.
the wages are negotiated for.
Okay.
And so they have universal health care. They've been incorrectly called a socialist state. They're actually a welfare state. They have a lot of tax and a lot of social programs, but all of their business is privatized. Even the railways, like
Hmm.
all of their transportation, their construction, all of that stuff is privatized and unionized. And I don't know. You're right in terms of the idea where it's like if you want America to keep printing money that it's deserving of and actually making trade deals and creating wealth for the country. Sure, the immigration stuff is good, but it's really bad for creating extreme wealth disparity, depressing wages for Americans, creating discontent that then results in stuff like drug abuse. It creates a lot of societal ills. I think it creates a lot of utility issues. But anyway, the point being,
You make good points.
Trump chose to talk about the fucking dog eating, the cat eating that's not real, instead of focusing on how immigration can affect these communities.
Right.
From either a pro or a con stance.
Once again, going back to he's just lost his touch, as I mentioned at the beginning. He doesn't have the ability to relate to normal people anymore. And that would have been a great chance for him to do so.
Yes.
But instead, he just went off the deep end, embarrassed himself, made a soundbite. Like no one's ever gonna. In the same way that like everyone remembers that you should be in jail line with Hillary. People are gonna always remember that like they're eating the pets.
Yeah, and not in a cool way.
Yeah, not in a good way.
So Republican voters obviously are not coming away from the debate thinking that Trump lost. They're coming away thinking that it was unfair.
Yep.
That the moderators were unfair.
It was unfair.
The moderators were unfair.
But he still lost and did terrible.
If the moderators were fair, would he have won?
No.
Did Kamala put up an impressive performance? No. She did what I think is the bare minimum, which is just do the lines.
Yep.
And it worked.
Yep.
So it's like, I think it spawns a greater question that as long as somebody like Trump is running, all it requires the Democrats to do is bring the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
The question is that a mistake? Because with Hillary, huge mistake. Biden, it worked out. We have another super close election.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that one of the current big strategic points for Democrats is recruiting these evil devil neocons to support them,
like the Cheneys.
She didn't technically name drop Cheney, I don't think, but she said the former vice president.
Yeah.
And it's like Democrats have hated Cheney for forever. And now Republicans hate Cheney too.
Mm-hmm.
And George Bush, Dick Cheney, probably some of the worst people to be in power in the history of our country.
We've come full circle, bro.
But it's incredible that, I think there are a lot of Republicans who believe that Kamala Harris is going to bring about a Marxist style regime. And when you hear about these endorsements, how can you not see that it's just like the only thing that Trump is offering is just like a lot of roll of the dice, crazy chance.
Mm-hmm.
He's not offering a true alternative to conservatism. He's just essentially like anything could happen. Whereas it's clear that the Democrats have realized that they no longer have to engage in leftist style thinking,
Yep.
in socialist style thinking, which I think we've talked about. It can be good to have these maybe more radical things to drive better policy. Like, I'm not saying
Yes.
it'd be good to become socialist, but it's good to have that stuff out there to drive policy and to drive agreement, as opposed to, it's like, how are these parties are different over the dumbest things only.
That's right.
Because they both, Trump doesn't like the Ukraine war, but most of the Republicans are still like, we need the Ukraine war. The Republicans and Democrats are both in favor of like blowing up Iran if they could. Republicans and Democrats are both in favor of supporting the IDF like to the bitter end.
Yep.
And so that's foreign policy. But in terms of economic policy too, it's like they're in favor of pretty much the
I got to
same
step up
thing.
here.
Think
Kamala
it's
made it.
different?
No. I just made it.
Okay,
Remember
yeah.
something. No, you're right. They're similar. So I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah.
Like on policy, despite the rhetoric, they're actually quite similar.
The differences are abortion.
Yep.
The differences are
Climate.
assault weapons. But
Climate.
like, did she talk about climate? She's pro fracking.
You're right.
There's
Kinda
like
didn't really
nothing.
come up. Yeah, they're different. But not that different.
Taxes, which is just a form. There's multiple ways to increase or decrease the deficit. Taxation is just the most popular conversation around it.
Yep. But they don't care about the deficit. Both of them are going to make it go up. What really aggravated me that Kamala did was she made a comment and she was like, for people who have a child, what was the number? 6,000 or 600?
$6,000.
$6,000 tax credit.
Yeah.
Who has their child. It's like, this is not going to work. As you mentioned, it's not big enough to have an impact
on the individual family.
and it's just large enough
to fuck with our deficit.
To fuck with the deficit and like blow up the debt. And it's just, look, at the end of the day, $6,000 isn't what the difference is between people having kids today. I saw a coworker today. He's like in his like 40s and he's 3 kids. And I looked at him like, this guy's rich.
Yeah.
Like if you've got 3 kids,
kids are a sign of status and wealth now, or it's a sign of like I'm not saying it actually is.
No.
This is how people perceive it. It's either a sign of wealth or it's a sign of like money, of extreme stupidity.
Yeah. Like you're either absolutely broke and on welfare, or you're like super like rich and you can afford to have 3 kids. So, $6,000 is not making the difference between someone having kids or not. And the fact that she thinks that this is a problem that can be solved just by throwing money at people.
She's this is an example. I did like Yang a bit, but he did something similar where they're essentially just saying, if you vote for me, I will pay you.
I will give you money.
It's illegal to pay people to vote for you, but it's not illegal to be like, well, if you vote for me, I'll give you
money if you have a kid.
Exactly, in these certain ways. So we're going to close up now. I think, we give the slight edge to Kamala, but it's pretty pathetic all around. And I don't think it matters that much. The numbers, the polling, if polling is to be believed, which it's not, is the closest. Trump's polling the best he's ever polled for an election. Though I think he's technically improved every election. If you think about how bad he polled in 2016,
that's a good point.
And then in 2020 he polled better than that,
and he still lost.
He's polling better.
Yep.
We'll see if people like Jill Stein can make an impact on the election. If people like RFK can. Historically, there's a few times it's occurred in modern electoral history. Like Ralph Nader, I think swung an election. But besides that, I think it's going to be tight still. We are entering October, which is when the undecided voters, who are the people who I don't know who exist, they're the people who I think, when they're like, oh, half of all people don't actually have an internal monologue. That's undecided voters. But I can't imagine it being like going towards the end of September and you're like, I don't know, it's a toss-up right now. But those people exist, and then they essentially decide the election in October.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that's the episode. It's going to be a shorter one today. We wanted to get this one out while we were both together.
Yep.
And then the next, I'm taller than Nick. This is really funny.
Yeah. Oh, everyone knows that.
I'm sitting in a little ass thing.
Yeah.
We're in a garage. Anyway, I think the next time we record Nick,
Mm-hmm.
I want to have this is an open call. I'm just putting it out there. If you want to be on the podcast, text Nick, comment, or send a message on the YouTube, and we'll set it up. We'll coordinate a topic to talk about,
I already
and
have
you
an
can
idea.
come on and talk to us about it.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss it. If you're listening, you're eligible. If you want to come on and talk, do it. Don't be afraid. I know you guys have valid criticisms over the stuff we talk about and you disagree with us, which is good. But I'm giving you the opportunity right now to come join us and be a part of that and to have that video so we can have a reasonable discussion about these types of things and not,
It's gonna be great.
not a Steven Crowder or Charlie Kirk discussion, hopefully.
Yeah, we won't bait you, obviously. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. Bye.
All right. Have a good one, guys.